Ba-deep. That's all, folks. It was a long night. She did really well, though. I'm sure everybody else can kind of, relate, maybe. So appreciate you being here this morning. It's a pleasure. I am not only intimidated by having all of you out here, but behind me. That is really intimidating. I don't know what I was thinking when I came to Candace and said, "How about we do the leadership team?" Wow. And then she ran with it. And it was like, oh, wow, okay. I am in like Flynn. So we're going to really get into just a fraction of team debriefing. These reports have so much content that I am just going to be very narrow with what I present today. But hopefully you will glean some ideas on what you can start to do to make the team report even more valuable to you and to your client. I believe in creating impact. It's kind of that 1-2 punch that a boxer has in the ring. You've got to build some impact because that's what's influential. I think I've got the Cherie syndrome here. The other thing I like to point out about the team reports is that you start to see diversity. And diversity is good, but it can also be a challenge when you have a lot of it on a team. And that's where I like to really drill down into these team reports to say, where are the large pendulum swings? So that's what I'm going to present today. I appreciate this team up here because they are going to be revealed. True transparency. And any time in building teams, the critical factor is just that, is transparency. In order to work with one another, you have got to be genuine. And what we're going to be doing today is really pulling back the curtain and revealing what these individuals' strengths are. And when you see them, they're going to be crazy different. And yet they're a leadership team. And when you see this, you're going to go, how do they come up with a unified voice when they are so different? But that is the beauty of having these team reports. It will reveal to you exactly what the differences are, and then you can start coaching around that. So quickly, you can see that this is just each one of their top driving force. And we've got several that are resourceful. We've got a receptive, one intentional, and one harmonious. And I'm sure right out the gate you can't imagine who that harmonious might be. Did you notice I'm trying to keep up with Todd today? That's a hard act, I'm telling you. So this particular page, you won't find it exactly in your team report. What you're going to see today is I take things and I rebuild them so that it can be a little bit more impactful and succinct in what you're trying to message to a team. So you're going to see some of this and go, where did that come from? So don't be surprised that you won't be able to find it in a team report. This you will. This is the spreadsheet that is in all of the team reports, and it gives you a real quick snapshot of what this leadership team's top primary driving forces are. We see resourceful, receptive, intentional, commanding. Then we've got the other bucket of situational, and then the indifferent. And you've got the coloring. How many people in here are using the team reports? Yay. Let me give you a stat. We just came out with this in March, correct? We released it in March. Over 5,000 reports have been run. And that was in comparison to the year before. We ran just under 1,700, around 1,700. January 1st to today, we've already run 41. That's how popular this team report has become. So when you look at the color situation here, what I like to do is I like to focus on the extremes. So see the light blue and the pinks? Quite a bit of it there, right? Well, let's kind of drill down even further. Because when you start to understand what a team's extremes are, then you can start to say, how is that impacting your ability to work together? And how might you bridge those differences? So let's look at the primary cluster. What I've done here is I've taken their top 4 and I'm showing the extremes. So you're going to see a name over here on the left. And then we've got the entire other team, the rest of the team over here. So where I'd like to kind of get the leadership team to talk around some of this, because, you know, when you run up against differences, as I said earlier, it can really be a challenge. But I want to challenge you. Take that and make it an opportunity. And you've got to, what is so easy to do when you see something like this is remember our driving forces can create biases, create blind spots. And these truly could be big blind spots. And what could happen in leadership meetings is that Todd is so extremely different that they may actually just shut him down because they can't go there. I can't relate. And that's what biases do, right? If we have a bias, we become closed-minded. So what I'm going to ask this group is to be open-minded, to try and see from Todd's perspective, because there's some real golden gems there that he could be offering. And when you give someone like Todd a voice, invite them into the conversation, that's when you get rich communication, collaboration, energy, unification. They'll look more collective. So I'm going to ask Rick. Rick, on the resourceful, you're like off the chart, and then you've got Todd who's scoring a 25. How does that play out when you're in leadership meetings? Because you're just trying to net stuff out, right?
You notice he brought me water on stage yesterday. One of the things that just knowing all of this stuff and knowing that he's extremely on the selfless end and I'm on the other end, and then if you look down the chart, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit, of the intentional, I have to really make sure that I'm not taking advantage of Todd and not making him do things that aren't normal in a business situation, because anything I ask him to do, he will do. I mean, he came over and helped me do the coating on my garage floor. I mean, he'll put up ceiling fans in my house. You did put up the ceiling fans. But, I mean, Todd's one of those guys that'll do anything you ask, and so it's just a matter of not taking advantage of that, because if you do that constantly, then it's going to get to the point where he's like, well, he feels taken advantage of, and that's not what we want. So we do have a great relationship in terms of that, because we understand the differences in those.
Yeah, because he's the type of guy that will never say no, right?
Right.
And as you said, that can kind of get him in trouble. So Todd, how might you respond to the opposite?
Can I respond for him?
Sure.
Because he's I have the mic, he doesn't. He has a new term. Whenever there is something that he doesn't want to do.
It's already out of control.
Yeah.
I knew this was going to happen.
When there is something that he doesn't want to do, it's, I'm flexible, I'll do it. So I know he doesn't want to do it, but he'd do it anyway.
So what's the question? Well, when it comes to where the spread is between Rick and I or anybody here, Rick is extremely mindful, as you said, of not taking advantage. I have a real understanding that extremely resourceful people see others as tools. And I'm good with that. I want to be the best, shiniest tool that you always want to go to in the toolbox.
Shocking. I don't even know how to follow that up.
But if I do feel taken advantage of, I do cut bait, but it takes a while.
So in meetings, when you're just trying to net it out, and does he have this tendency to say, whoa, but wait a minute, let's look at it from another perspective. How does that, are you listening to that? Is he able to bring in another perspective?
Yeah, and that's what we want with all the staff is that, and that's Dave's leadership of everybody has an idea, everybody has a voice, everything is a good idea, and that goes to even Candace of everything's yes and, it's not no but. Mm-hmm. And so it's a positive situation like that. But with Todd, we aren't looking at all of his behavioral style and other things either. Todd will shut down in meetings because he has a lot of combinations where he'll shut down, and I'll expect him in my office in about 15 or 20 minutes later with the door closed of wanting to talk through it. But that's just something that I'm working with you on as well, is like, just get it out. We can't, I don't want you to bottle it up, but he does shut down at times, and then it's a one-on-one meeting, and then we get through it.
Well, and you'll see that through the commanding, right? Because Todd is on the low end again of commanding. And you've got Dave, Rick, Candace, and Adam, they're kind of the ones in the in the front and wanting to lead.
Carol, I'll go ahead and say something.
Sure.
So what I've learned with Todd is that we see most of us are intentional, right? So our altruistic is like zero. Same with the resourceful. Now, we definitely want to think that we want to provide you great service, so we're focused on customer service, customer satisfaction, but Todd takes it to a whole new level. And at least speaking for myself, I'm not sure with the rest of the team, but it gives a whole new appreciation for altruism, because if we just don't have it, it's a zero. I think yours is a zero. I think Candace is a zero. Our intentionals are like 80, and our resourcefuls 99, 100, where all we're thinking is about practicality, efficiency, resourcefulness, and he brings us this different light. So back to the meeting question, if we're in a meeting and we're talking about, a perfect example is like rolling out a new feature in IDS. We're thinking, oh, great, they're going to love this. It's going to allow them to be faster and speedier. Let's get it out there right away. And with Todd's lower D, he may be kind of quiet and reserved at the moment, but then after the meeting might come back and say, hey guys, but are they going to know how to use it? We need to make sure that they have what they need before we go roll this out. So that's where that altruism customer just focus comes back into play, where I think it's starting to rub off on us more and more. So we're starting to keep that in our minds. A little bit? No? Yeah. So so that definitely helps. So adding that other dynamic, it actually helps us all grow. But he's been there for several years, and we're just now getting the hang of it. So it takes a while.
So on your willingness to always help, I have a question. Because he will. I mean, if Craig has to go hang a TV or one of those new whiteboards and stuff, I'll go, hey, Todd, you got some time to help? And sure, he never says no. So my question is, if someone asks me to help, I'm like, oh, okay, I got to do this, I got to do that. So I always can have an excuse. Sometimes I help, right? And sometimes I have to get these things done. So are you not thinking about all the things you have to get done at the time you're saying, yeah, I'll do that? Or are you just always wanting to help and then, oh, shoot, I forgot I was supposed to go do this, but I helped you. You understand what I'm saying? I understand. And I, too, don't want to abuse you as well, but just curious, how are you looking at that when you say yes?
How I look at it is, and no, I don't forget anything. But what I'll do is, I know the list of things that I want, need, desire to get done, and I'll always squeeze something else in. I will just prioritize things and just be sure that everything gets done, maybe pick up my pace a little bit, and to get everything done.
Are you making a mental adjustment to your schedule?
Yes.
Or are you just focusing on saying yes?
I'm doing both at the same time. I'm thinking, you know what, I know I've got these things. And Rick will say, you know, Adam came to me the other day and said, hey, Todd, are you free? I need to bring some things down to conference. And I think that was one of the first times I said no, because I really had too much on my plate, which is very, very rare. But I felt bad. You know, the other day I had to say no to Rick about something, and I felt so bad. Or no, I came running down to conference to help, and then they did everything, and I felt so guilty driving back thinking, I came down to help and it was done. But no, I will drop everything, but I'll still also prioritize things to make sure that every single thing is done to perfection.
You know, this is interesting. I hope you're getting something out of it, because this is what you can find on running your own team sessions. And what they're doing is they're asking one another, how does that make you feel? And they're aware of it. They don't want to take advantage of his selfless. So this is really, I mean, that's why I like to do the extremes, because it just makes it so black and white. Where could you actually start, you know, taking advantage of it just by seeing this?
And at the beginning, when he'd just walk into your office and say, hey, is there anything I can do for you? And at the beginning, before I really get to know him, I'm like, what is he up to, you know? You make me feel a little uncomfortable, but now that I know you, now I know you're just genuine. So I'm saying at the beginning, that could be a frustration, or, you know, what's going on? Or you're making a low social feel, you know,
Right.
uncomfortable.
I think that has been one of the biggest things for myself as well, because I'm not used to that. And he's always there available to do all these things. So whenever one of these situations occur, especially with Rick or Dave, where he would be, do you need anything? I just would sit there, and it would take me a minute to just not say anything, and not also thinking that he was joking. Yeah, because at the beginning, I didn't know. I'm like, is he joking? Is he just trying to... Because it was not something really that I ever experienced, because he's really to the extreme. And of course, he's the one person that every morning is going to say, good morning, and ask about, you know, particular me, the kids, right? I'm like, good. You know, when everybody else is busy or we're minding our own business, especially in the morning, I believe definitely in workplace courtesy. So there's always a good morning, but it's not always necessary a question, or, you know, depending on how my day is going, I might be busy. He always has that question. No matter what we are doing, in the middle of what, he always takes the 5 seconds to acknowledge that you're there and ask a personal question, not just the typical, how you doing? And that takes a little bit, although it's a very nice thing. It takes a little bit for all of us to understand and to really land that he's meaning that versus he's just making small talk.
So I think that's a great point, and that's what we're trying to do today, is to get you to understand that every driving force brings value. And they're recognizing it, and it plays out differently for each person. But it's a great testimony. We're going to hit on one more, and this must feel like, you know, what do you call it? Frying Todd. What's it called? Hot seat? Todd's on the hot seat?
This is comfort zone.
Yeah. But I had already asked him if he was comfortable with this. So let's talk about the high harmonious, because that one is usually really misunderstood. And he is, as you can see, he's a 99. So normally when I run across people who are high harmonious, I call them, they're kind of quirky. They're the ones that are bringing up these kind of crazy ideas out of left field. So in your leadership meetings, do you ever hear him come up with something out in left field?
What do you think?
Yeah, but you don't see me on either end of that, so that's a situational one for me, and so I get both sides. I see the function, I see the form and the beauty of both sides on that. And so that's something that's different from, like Adam and Ashley are both way on the objective end when you look at that. And Todd's so far on the other end, but I'm in the middle, so that one's an easy one for me to kind of bridge the gap between the
to
two.
navigate
Yeah.
a little bit. And that's helpful to Todd. So, because what's easy is to really shut that creativity down in him, because the rest of them are so far off on the other end of the objectives. And that's what this is all about. You want everybody to come to the table to share and be genuine, because that's the beautiful thing about diversity. You can't have, as Dave, you know, as a coach, you can't have just one talent for one position. You've got to have multiple. It's like an orchestra. These guys have to learn how to start working in sync based upon their differences. That's just driving forces. And, you know, there's a lot to go through here, and we're not going to hit everything, but let's get into the behaviors. We have a pretty heavy concentration of D, some C, and then we have another lone wolf as an I. Golly, can you imagine who that might be? It's Dave. Yeah, surprise. This is their team wheel. And so as you can see, you know, I always like to look at this and say, let's split the wheel in half. Who's on top and who's on bottom? Well, we've got Todd on the bottom. He's the only people-oriented person in this group.
Thank God.
The rest of them are cracking the whip and wanting to get stuff done. And he's saying, whoa, but what about the people? Do you feel that?
Yes. Yeah, I am the extreme relational person trying to convert transactional people to my side.
One of the things that's super helpful from a marketing standpoint, and I always believed that marketing represented the consumer more than anybody else until I met Todd. And when I need to have a good understanding about things, or when I need to start to build those relationships with other VAAs, Todd always steps in and is sure to make that introduction for me. And when we first got started, I think this is a combination of driving forces as well, but when I first got started, I needed to understand where you all were sitting. And I asked Todd if he can make an introduction for me to 2 new VAAs every single week. And he did that week in and week out, and it helped me to get grounded. But I recognized that those people skills and really leaned into them, and they were super helpful for me. Thank you.
So when you get to this wheel, these are some observations that you might want to make. And there's just some kind of basic questions here about how, you know, are they not diversified enough? You know, maybe they need a few more people on the bottom half to keep them kind of balanced and looking at that people side. But those are just some quick questions as far as how they're all seated on the wheel. Now I'm going to pick on Ryan because Ryan hasn't really said anything, and he's the guy that really sits on the extreme right.
Thanks.
So when you're in a group like this, Ryan, and they're going at a pretty fast clip because most everybody's over on the faster pace side, how does that make you feel in these types of meetings?
Usually I try to correct them and tell them they're wrong in some aspect, or say no, because there's a lot of details in there that they just kind of gloss over that need to be, you know, defined.
Okay.
We call Ryan our red team.
But he'll be the anchor. Yeah, he'll be the anchor, and he will slow them down, and he'll say, where did that come from? Or have you thought about how to connect A to B and B to C? Because all of these guys are innovators. It's the bright, shiny new object. And what Ryan's doing, that's mildly entertaining, but let's get back to reality here, guys. How are we going to make that come to fruition? Is it possible? Let's look at some of the gaps that they may have. They don't have somebody sitting up in the analyzer, they don't have somebody down in the supporter, and they don't have somebody down in the promoter area. Normally what you like to see is some balance. And so that might be something in the future that they actually look at and are intentional in the way that they start bringing people onto the leadership team. Again, in the team report, you're going to get the spreadsheet here. So what I've done here is basically the behavioral characteristics are color-coded. So anything that's in red is the D, the I is the yellow, the S will be green, and the C is in the blue. So again, we have lots of Todds, and Rick, you're kind of hanging out over here with Todd. How's that make you feel? Good? Okay. Because you're by yourself. You like autonomy. Okay, yeah. So here's the one thing that I've learned about teams, and because Todd has a very low urgency and competitive, and everybody else has a pretty good level of that. How's that playing out on your team?
Every benchmark we do, I put sense of urgency at the top, and the rest of them take it back down, because that's just where I am with these kinds of things. And so as I walk out of my office, I have to remember I have to slow down. And that's one of the things that in my hurrying up trying to get through in 20 minutes yesterday I forgot to say, but one of my favorite sayings, it's a racing term, is that you have to slow down to go faster. So if I think of that when I'm going out to work with the rest of the team, it helps kind of just remember where I'm at in terms of my sense of urgency and then the sense of urgency of some of the other people on the team.
So Todd, does their sense of urgency ever just kind of fluster you or cause you to shut down? I mean, Rick said sometimes you will shut down. Is it because of that intensity?
Yes, it definitely is. The only sense of urgency I ever have, and I think it pulls from my altruism, is if I need to, my emails, my phones, getting to a meeting on time, but every other sense of urgency I do not have. So it does become frustrating at times.
And that's really important on teams, guys, because when they're so far apart, that sense of urgency, if it's not reined in, will shut down the members of your team. I'm here to tell you. It's like these guys with a high sense of urgency and competitiveness can just run over people and not even realize that they've left carnage behind them. Mm-hmm. And remember, it's trying to make sure that everybody has a voice at the table, especially with leadership groups. So they need to recognize, they need to have that relational touch and remember what each one has. What are your strengths? Your strengths can also be your worst enemy.
Well, we're also using process to help slow us down as well. So we got certain procedures and policies in place that we would love to release the new EQ or the new, TSI or something? SSI. Well, okay, say it that way. Before the manuals are done, right? Yeah, I keep saying his stuff. So we're trying to use policies and procedures to slow us down that, and give 2 weeks notice. Sometimes that's hard to do, but.
No, hold on to that. So what you'll notice about Dave.
This was pick on Todd.
Yep, no, I'm going to pick on Dave. So see where Dave sits here in the primaries? He really has all 4 of these. Do you remember what was in his top driving forces? One of them was structured. Nobody else has that in their profile. So I'm going to ask a very pinpointed question. And you guys told me, I could ask anything.
No.
Dave just changed his mind. Because I know how this company was built, and it was built on tradition and legacy, and Bill is gone now, and Dave wants to try and continue that legacy and doesn't want it to be forgotten. But yet, you have to be innovative. In moving this company forward and with what you have as far as the strengths on this team, How are you going to protect yours and your father's legacy going forward?
Well, I think from the, everyone talks about coming to this conference, it's different than others. I think now as a group, we're able to carry that same vibe on. As Bill and Bud kind of helped set that tone years ago, right? I definitely didn't do it. So hopefully now as a group effort, we're continuing that part of the legacy. Like the video studio, I wanted it built, but I don't want to go in there, right? And I tried. We hired an actor or a coach to come in, and it was horrible. So you won't see me probably, but I don't know.
But I think what's important here is that because he is kind of that high C and blended with the D, and he has that structured, that will continue to kind of be the glue so that he'll be the checks and balance so that every bright, shiny object that keeps coming across that they want to follow, I think Dave is actually going to say, whoa, wait a minute. That's not what this company is about. Let's go back to where we started, go back to what worked for us, and really protect that. That's how I see it, and I love the fact that you have that in your profile. To be kind of that protector, have that shield to make sure that we don't lose that, we don't lose sight of it.
I think that's one of the balance things that we're still trying to work through is that we're trying to move things forward where I don't have to see everything and Dave doesn't have to see everything, but then there's certain things that Dave says, why didn't I see that? And so there's just so much activities going on, so many things we want to accomplish is that's the piece that's, I think, been one of the harder things for us. I mean, because Candace runs and the marketing team is going hard and fast, and all of a sudden there'll be an email that's going out tomorrow at 7:30 in the morning, and we get it at 4:30 in the afternoon, and that's Dave's biggest thing that drives him nuts is that I want more than a day to see something, and so that's a balance piece that we're still working on.
Or a couple hours.
Yeah. I think if there's anything that you walk away from today is knowing that these team reports are going to give you this type of information. When you have extremes like that, it's hard to build trust because you're so different. And you just sometimes can't go there. And what this leadership team now has the challenge not only of picking up and moving things forward after Bill's, unexpected death, now they've actually got to start to look at one another and bring out those strengths really building that level of trust with one another. If you don't have trust, you can't build a strong team. You're going to have some fracturing. What's happening to the Patriots right now, the football team? Quarterback, owner against the coach, and it's starting to fracture. Will they win a championship again? Potentially. Maybe they'll be able to overcome it. But a lot of times, that's just enough to damage the goods so that they aren't a championship team. But it's the transparency. It's really giving each other the voice and not shutting it down because it's like, oh my God, another whacked out idea? But really being open to it because you want to build the confidence in one another. You want to build that trust with one another. That's what these team reports can do in a real quick time, just through these simple little charts that I've built just to see the extremes and say, this is what we've got up against us. Now, how are we gonna bridge these differences? Because isn't that what our reports are all about? Understanding ourselves, understanding the other person, and then how are we going to adapt to build those win-win relationships?
Now, one of the biggest things I have learned through all of these processes is what you're saying, trust. And with the trust comes the acknowledgement too. I have learned to acknowledge those that are strong in the areas where I lack. And I'm totally fine with that. So for example, I work a lot with Ryan. We're very opposite in our styles and everything, just about. But we work together a lot. And we have actually a pretty good relationship. But I have learned that his critical eye is very useful for me. He sees things that I don't get to see. So what do? I go to him when I need these things, when I need to hear somebody tell me, what am I doing wrong or what am I missing? He'll be the one. He's my person to go to. PowerPoint presentations, all of those things that with that high D, we just, oh, it's fine. Nobody's going to notice that. Nobody's going to notice that it's a little off. Yeah, that's my thought. Like, who cares? I'm not giving a PowerPoint class. I'm talking about something specific. That's my view, right? He'll be like, no, you can't do that. So he'll take my presentation and help me fix it. So I think with the trust, and I trust him. He can have it, do what you need to do, and then I'll have it back. And I trust. I trust what he did for me. I do not question. I do not double check. I learn to trust. So with the acknowledgement of knowing that he's better at that than me comes the trust. And I think that's the biggest thing from these type of dynamics.
And I think, what's always interesting is this is what the rest of the employees look at. And if they don't trust one another or showing that trust, what does that do to our commitment? What does that do to the morale of our company? And you talk about disengagement and the numbers are up. If we don't have a unified voice here, it's contagious what they're projecting out to us. And if we see any fracturing here, that's going to cause us to get a little, ooh, there's trouble in River City. Is this company going to make it? Are we going to be okay? Should I start getting my resume dusted up? So what's difficult, what I really want you to walk away with, what's difficult is getting leadership teams like this on the same page, in sync with one another, and really messaging things the same way.